An assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Pennsylvania, but he is saved. One spectator died and one injured. Shooter is also dead. Good morning. Welcome to Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all international news resources and my team. I am also thankful to all American, European, Canadian, Australian, Asian, African channels and AP, AFP and Reuters news agencies. Now watch the channels. Headlines. According to FBI, Israeli attack on Gaza City killed 90 people, the highest number of dead in one attack. All world leaders condemn the attack on Donald Trump. Mr. Biden says there is no room for violence in America. Extreme heat in United States and wildfires in Canada. Foreign propaganda on social media against America. Children conditions belonging to foster homes. Mr. Biden is not quitting race. Paris River Seine for Olympic Games. Dr. Ruth and Richard Simon died.
Tonight on PBS News Weekend, from railroad tracks to drawbridges, how extreme heat is affecting the way Americans get from place to place. Then, how U.S. officials are fighting foreign propaganda on social media. And an investigation uncovers abuse and mistreatment at some youth residential treatment centers.
My group home experience is something I still carry with me to this day. My body is covered in scars from some of those fights.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm John Yang. Death and destruction in southern Gaza today. Palestinian officials say a targeted Israeli airstrike killed at least 90 people. That would make it one of the deadliest attacks of the war. Israel says the target was Hamas military chief Mohammed Deif, thought to be the chief architect of the October 7th attacks. Hamas says he wasn't in the area at the time of the strike. Israeli officials don't deny that it took place in a part of Khan Yunis that was designated as a safe place where displaced Palestinians intend.
End this war. This is enough. There is no safe zone in Gaza. End this war. Have mercy on us and our children. We are getting killed every minute.
In addition to the dead, hundreds of others were wounded. Hamas says the attack is proof that Israel isn't interested in a ceasefire agreement. President Biden was again working to shore up support today, speaking virtually with groups of moderate and progressive House Democrats. Vice President Harris was on the campaign trail in Pennsylvania. She told a town hall organized by an Asian American group that this is the most important election for America.
Our President Biden, he is a fighter. We will continue to fight. We will continue to organize. And in November, we will win.
This week, PBS News NPR Marist poll of registered voters found no difference in support for Mr. Biden and Vice President Harris in head-to-head matchups with Donald Trump, each supported by 50% of those polled. Trump got 48% against the president and 49% against Harris. Russia and Ukraine traded more attacks today. Ukraine says Russian shelling killed 4 people along the front lines, while Ukraine's latest long-range drone attack fired south Rostov region. In Paris, Olympic organizers still intend to use the River Seine for some events, despite concerns about its cleanliness. Today, French sportsmen took a dip in an effort to dispel worries, while years of efforts have improved quality. Data from city testing shows that as recently as last week, there were days of unsafe levels of fecal bacteria. There was to be the venue later this month for the swimming leg of triathlon and for marathon swimming. And sex therapist Dr. Ruth Westheimer has died. Known simply as Dr. Ruth, in the 1980s talked and candidly about things rarely discussed in public at the time. She became a pop culture icon with her own TV and radio shows. Born in Germany and orphaned by the Holocaust, her varied life experiences included being trained as a sniper in Israel's War of Independence. Ruth Westheimer was 96 years old. Still to come on PBS News Weekend, why children in residential treatment centers are vulnerable to abuse, and U.S. attempts to crack down on Russian disinformation through social media.
From WPA Studios in Washington, home of the PBS NewsHour. It's on PBS.
What forecasters are calling an extremely dangerous heat wave is persisting in the West, and it's expected to extend triple-digit temperatures to the Midwest and East this weekend. Scientists say much of this heat is a long-term result of greenhouse gas emissions, and it's affecting everything from the power grid to trains and automobiles.
Me Too Culture.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news. At a Pennsylvania rally after apparent gunshots rang through the crowd.
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Trump and others on the stage ducked for cover. Blood could be seen near Trump's right ear as he was escorted off the stage by the Secret Service. He was taken to a vehicle and transported away from the site. Our Washington Bureau Chief Jackson Prosco has been following this and joins us now with the latest. So, Jackson, what do we know about this possible assassination attempt?
Neithu, this happened at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's just outside of Pittsburgh. Those gunshots appeared to ring out. They were followed by a short volley thereafter. What we know tonight is that the suspected gunman is dead. So is one attendee at the rally, and another attendee at the rally is in serious condition. Former President Trump was whisked away. We've got some pictures to show you here. You can see the Secret Service actually had leapt on top of him to conceal him. You see they pull him up there. He is bloodied. It's his right ear that appears to have been hit. You saw Trump then make a fist bump to the crowd to signal that he was okay, defiant after what happened there. He was whisked away by the Secret Service a short time later, taken to hospital for evaluation. He is fine. He is just being monitored, but he is said to be absolutely fine. Obviously shaken, though, as is the entire country. This is the first assassination attempt, apparently. This is being investigated as an apparent assassination attempt. That's not yet confirmed yet. But it certainly harkens back to what happened to Ronald Reagan in 1980. A short time ago, President Joe Biden addressed the nation and said he had attempted to speak to former President Trump, hadn't reached him yet, but was condemning this apparent act of political violence.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And so I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that the people and we have more detail to come.
And Jackson, you've been to these types of rallies before. What kind of security would there typically be at one of these rallies?
Yeah, so even though this was in a rural area
in the U.S., what kind of reaction are we seeing to this news, and how could this affect the Republican National Convention set to start on Monday?
Yeah, you heard the comments there from President Biden. That is the broad sentiment from both Democrats and Republicans, that there is no place for political violence in this country. The unfortunate reality, though, is that the temperature here right now is so heated, the climate is so divisive, that an incident like this has been exactly what has been feared for a very long time. You listen to the rhetoric coming from both campaigns. You take the pulse of everyday Americans. People are amped up for their...
In Washington. Thanks, Jackson. To Gaza now, where there are reports a deadly Israeli airstrike hit a designated humanitarian zone. The Hamas-run health ministry says at least 90 people were killed in an attack on the Al-Mawasi area west of Han Yunis, and about 300 more people were injured. Local officials say Nasser Hospital, one of the largest and few remaining hospitals in the Gaza Strip, is overwhelmed by the influx of civilian casualties and is no longer able to function.
Now we are unable inside the hospital to deal with any more cases, because all the hospital beds are full.
The Hamas-run health ministry says Israel's bombardment hit tents housing displaced Palestinians. Israel claimed nation disputes this, adding one of its senior employees and 3 other aid workers were killed in the strike. There were tit-for-tat drone strikes between Ukraine and Russia today as the conflict between the two countries rages on. In Ukraine, at least 4 people were killed and dozens of others were injured in attacks in the Kherson and Kharkiv regions. The latter's governor also accused Russian forces of targeting first responders after an initial bombardment. In Russia's southwestern Rostov region, the governor there says a Ukrainian drone strike ignited an oil depot, sparking a 200-square-meter fire. It has since been extinguished and there were no casualties. It has been a frightening day for thousands of residents in Newfoundland and Labrador. More than 9,000 people have fled Labrador City as wind and heat fuel a threatening
Zinkowski, Global News, Saskatoon.
In Nova Scotia, it's another day of cleanup for residents following this week's floods, but it's an especially frustrating effort for the community of Windsor. The town's storm drainage system failed, leaving some of the streets to become a murky mess. And as Zach Power explains,
I want to talk to you a little bit more about orgasm.
It was that frank talk that made Dr. Ruth Westheimer a household name. She died Friday at her home in New York City, surrounded by family. The German-born sex therapist encouraged open dialogue on once taboo bedroom topics. Her radio program catapulted her into fame in the 1980s, and she became a regular on the late-night TV talk show circuit. Dr. Ruth, as she was known, was 96 years old. Just a day after celebrating his 76th birthday, iconic celebrity fitness guru Richard Simmons has died.
1, 8, and walk it and snap. 1.
According to ABC News, Simmons was found unresponsive in his Los Angeles home. His cause of death is unknown, but it's likely from natural causes. He previously revealed he was diagnosed with skin cancer. Simmons skyrocketed to fame in the 1970s for his flamboyant and energetic workouts, which he went on to perform on television for decades. Just yesterday, he thanked fans on social media for sending him birthday greetings and wished them a most beautiful rest of their day in his final post. Canada's largest wind farm coming up, the bold move for green hydrogen facing mixed reactions.
This really has become the backbone of Donald Trump's political career. Rural America has hitched their wagon to his movement, and it all started in November of 2016. It got stronger on the election of 2020, and this is the reason why running a campaign, trying to take back the White House, the president would go to a place like Butler, Pennsylvania today for tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, and knowing what a prize it is, the vice president was there today in the Philadelphia area. The first lady was there in Pittsburgh today. It is a prize, part of that blue wall that the Biden team has talked about they need to win, and that the Trump team thinks they may be able to pick off this time around. Meantime, on the political front, as we talked about moments ago, the Biden team taking down all outgoing political advertising, commercials, essentially a pause on what we are looking at in the middle of a very heated campaign season. I believe that we have Congressman Steve Scalise with us, who is a survivor of political violence. And Congressman, Bill and I were working together the morning you were shot. And thank God every day that you have recovered. But I got to ask you how this sat with you today, watching this play out.
Well, it was difficult to watch. You know, it brings back a lot of emotions. You know, my first thoughts were to pray for President Trump. You know, early reports, you really weren't sure what happened. You saw blood coming from his ear, but you know, as we see now, I mean, it was a clear assassination attempt. I think there was maybe some divine intervention in preventing that from being much worse than it could have been. There were other deaths. We pray for all of those that were injured or killed innocently. You know, the shooter was down, and you know, you saw law enforcement take swift action, and we saw that too on the ball field. Law enforcement is the first to go run towards the danger. They did it today. They did it on the ball field, and that's one of the things that keeps more people safe when evil people show up to do things like this. And there's no place for it. There's just no place for violence in our politics in America, and we can never accept it. We all need to forcefully denounce it.
Got a statement from the FBI a moment ago, sir. FBI personnel are on the scene in Butler, Pennsylvania. The FBI will continue to work jointly with the U.S. Secret Service as the investigation moves forward. Speaking of that investigation, Congressman, we're a long way from truly understanding what happened here. We're a long way from understanding whether there was one person or more than one person who showed up at that rally today.
Tonight, Donald Trump injured at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. Terrifying moments as shots were fired.
Take a look at what happened.
The former president rushed to safety in what's being called an assassination attempt. Extensive coverage straight ahead. An extremely aggressive inferno in Newfoundland and Labrador.
From what was a 600-hectare fire to an over 10,000-hectare fire.
As thousands of Canadians are forced out of their homes. Plus, a summer slump in the real estate market.
It hasn't been easy. There's been days where it's like, okay, maybe we should just take the house off the market.
Would-be homebuyers still staying on the sidelines.
Or anything about the shooter's identity so far, although according to the Associated Press, as per their conversation with the attorney of Butler County, that has been killed. So it's all that identify these reports. Now we're joined by Julia Manchester. She's a reporter of The Hill, and she's us from Washington. Julia, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Julia, what is the latest I've been hearing about the situation?
Well, the latest is that we know that President Trump has been taken to a hospital. We are told he is fine, but one interesting thing is we haven't been told what the extent of his injuries are or if he was injured. It appeared that there was blood on his face, but we just don't know. Yes, so kind of hard to make an assumption based off of that. We're listening to to hear more updates, and we know that right now officials have described this as a potential assassination. After that
for tuning in, we play for you the moment when Secret Service agents rushed former President Trump off the stage. We want to caution you that we don't know exactly who said what's captioned on the screen or why they said it, because it was such a chaotic moment, but here it is.
Are we good? Shooters down! Shooters down! Are we good to move? We're good to move. We're clear! We're clear! Let's move! We're clear!
And again, that moment of chaos, you hear the screams in the crowd as people are beginning to learn that something is amiss there. Our investigative correspondent Tom Winter is with us on the phone. He continues to get reaction to national security details. What can you tell us now?
Lester, while I'm on the phone with you, one of my colleagues is on the phone with the local district attorney in that county who tells NBC News that the alleged shooter, the person they believe responsible for this event, is in fact deceased. Who gets repeat? The district attorney at the area where the Trump rally is telling one of our colleagues right now that in fact the alleged shooter, the person they believe to be responsible for this, is deceased. We do not yet have a name or identity of that individual. We don't know their background, where they may have come from, any sort of personal motivations. That's information we're still trying to gather. But that's the headline. The second component of this, 3 senior U.S. law enforcement officials tell myself and colleague Jonathan Deans that there appear to have been, or they're looking into whether or not several other individuals were shot that were in the crowd. Those are not individuals suspected to be in those doors or
the direction of authorities. They are emptying out. Rally's over.
It's incredible to believe that emptied out. We were talking just so it was packed, and now we just saw, we see that area has been yelling behind you, Scott. No doubt this is a difficult, frightening moment for everyone who was there. Everyone across the country was watching. To have been fired toward the president. And at this point, it's too early to know exactly what happened. We saw him reach up and touch his head. We don't know if he was hit. We don't know if he was grazed. We don't know if someone else was hit. You just told us, Scott, that you saw an ambulance at the scene. But this is a moment that is going to change the trajectory of this campaign. Already, so much focus has been on this campaign, on this President Biden, now talking about the thinkable, potentially former President Trump on stage as shots ring out here in Butler County, Pennsylvania. Scott, can you tell us a bit of what you're seeing now? What are people yelling behind you?
No, they're yelling at us. Some of the members of the crowd are gesturing towards us and screaming vulgarities at the media. We're all in a row here on the rafters above the...
Yeah, this is certainly clearing out now, and I step with you sort of a lay of the land of what we're seeing here. So if we could just push in on right there, you can see that the sign has actually fallen off of the podium. This is where the former president was surrounded by Secret Service agents as he was then rushed off of this stage after we heard these popping sounds. And I want our camera to just veer here to the left. You can already see here, you see law enforcement officials right now. They're putting up this caution tape around this area. This is very much an active scene at this moment. You see law enforcement officials, they are taking notes. We're starting to see the presence of law enforcement officials increase as this area has now started to be cleared. Of course, you can see the amount of chairs that have been tossed and turned over. It just shows you how chaotic these moments were. I cannot stress this enough. To hear those popping sounds and then all of a sudden to just see people just dive for cover, people yelling, get down, cover your head. We did not know necessarily what those were. There are photos of the former president covering his ear. He did, as I mentioned before, after he was surrounded by Secret Service agents, he did get up, he raised his fist in the air. It was a sign to his supporters that were gathering here that he was okay. His supporters then cheered. But I can tell you there were several minutes after this where the crowd just didn't necessarily know what to do as the former president was rushed off of the stage. They didn't know whether or not they should quickly leave, rush out of here, whether or not they were safe, whether or not they could stay in place. The rally obviously officially ended after that, and then that's when we started to see people stream out of this area. Many members gathering here today, visibly shaken by what occurred. We are now seeing a helicopter that appears.
Natalie Savrikas, France 24's Athens correspondent. I'll be bringing you the latest from Greece and Cyprus live here on news and other TV programs. So join me here on France 24.
Natalie Savrikas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Hello and welcome to Daybreak here on France 24. Here are this evening's main headlines.
Take a look.
Known to have done in an strike that targeted the Hamas. First this hour, it's being described as the most serious attempt to assassinate a president or presidential candidate. It's Ron Reagan shot in 1981. Just days before he's due to attempt the Republican nomination for the third time. He's now flown to New Jersey and plans to spend the night at his private golf club. Meanwhile, the gunman held at the scene identified as a 20-year-old local man. A bystander also injured. And Joe Biden have been quick to condemn the attack. With the latest, here's Eliza Herbert.
And you know, that's a little bit old.
1 minute, Donald Trump was addressing his supporters. The next,
said, take a look at what happened.
The sounds of gunfire rang out. New detonations and cries of horror. As regards, he points to the appeared to mouth the words, "Fight, fight, fight," with blood around his ear. The bullet that hit him perforated the upper part of his ear. After the attack, the Trump campaign released a statement saying he was fine, and the Republican candidate posted on his social media site.
I knew immediately that something was wrong, in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately I felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place.
According to local authorities, at least one rally attendee was killed, as well as the suspected shooter, a moment this eyewitness claimed to see.
Guy, right over with an M16 with a blanket pointing at the president. He starts shooting. Bow, 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 bow. 4 to 5 shots rang out. All right, so I throw the guy I'm with, Jim, onto the ground. I jump to the ground. I look up, then I see it gets shot from the Secret Service.
The venue was evacuated. U.S. President Joe Biden
idea that there's survival like heard everybody, damn it, everybody.
And the political reaction we spoke a short time ago with our Washington correspondent Fraser Jackson. Thank you. That was our international affairs editor, Philip Terrell. Let's move on to other world news. The strike took place in an area designated as a safe zone for hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. Israel has targeted Hamas military commander Mohammed Dev. Massive strike at southern Gaza that killed 9 people, including children. Hamas has rejected the claim that the target was in the area. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel says he can't be certain that Dev and Hamas were actually in the attack.
Of Israel and his deputy brother it's not
And it's Bastille Day here in France. Some 130,000 police officers are being deployed this weekend to ensure the smooth running of the July 14 festivities, which fall less than 2 weeks before the opening of the Olympic Games. France traditionally marks its national holiday with fireworks and a military parade. You're watching Daybreak here on France 24. This Friends weekly guide to understanding France.
Congolese on the entry rebels of humanity. Fire in since July 5th aimed to allow humanitarian workers to access conflict zones in the North province. The armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo and its partners vigorously denounce the Kigali failure to direct the troops attitude of wanting displaced in a condition, thus them access sanitary aid. In the Don Bosco camp for displaced persons, ceasefire the war is efficient. The week or fail. Find out later. Because we just want to leave these camps. We are suffering a lot and want to go home. The United States and Belgium have both welcomed the ceasefire. However, its breakdown has opened up debate and controversy. In Roma, opinions are mixed, with many residents voicing their despair that the truce was so easily broken. In view of the fact that the RDF M23 coalition has just sabotaged this truce recommended by the United States, it is necessary that consequent measures be taken against those who have violated this decision. We would have liked to see this respected on both sides to allow a humanitarian corridor. With only one left of the ceasefire, the national community will be watching closely as the conflict evolves.
Lionel Messi and Argentina continue to train at FIU on Friday as they prepare to face Colombia in Sunday's Copa America final at Miami's Hard Rock Stadium. He defeated Canada 2-0 on Tuesday to reach the final, Julian Alvarez and Messi contributing the goals. The Albiceleste have won 10 straight matches and are seeking a record 16th Copa title. Together, around 22 World Cup Championship, Argentina and 12 Euro Championship. Colombia, Uruguay, Initia's won battle on Wednesday. Lema, the minute to lose Cafeteros held nose eject in the first half stoppage time. It will be Colombia's first final since winning the title as host in 2001. Escapes.
We have calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump.
The US President Joe Biden condemns the shooting, which claimed the life of an attendee in a
idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just inappropriate.
Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ruby Cornish. Former President Donald Trump had Albania. The former president sustained an injury to his right ear and has been treated in hospital.
This is Agenda.
In Hong Kong and New Delhi, Jakarta, I'm Angela Lim. At the Donald spectators killed, others critically injured. The 20-year-old suspected shooter also dead and has been identified. The lawmakers saying any of political goals and calling for national unity.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this.
And
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.